So I'm going to call this a tool. I don't know exactly if that's what it is. And what I'm going to call it is playtime in the shallow end, right? So my life is very challenging. I think most people would say that of their own lives. But I am neurodivergent. I'm autistic. I have a lot of medical issues that have kind of come up all at once, and everything kind of just, like where one thing blows up and you think you start to recover and then it blows up again and again and again, right? Like it's been a rough ride. But anyway, during all of that, there's just so many of these things, especially when it comes to like your mental health and like the personal relationships that you have that are affected by those things because everything just changes and everybody does care about you and they're asking about stuff, but it's like the medical and physical and mental health problems, they're very deep. Those are very deep things to go into, and it's very deep how it affects our life, and it's very very deep about like the things that it does to our identity and like the things that we like abilities that we lose along the way and what that kind of can show us about ourselves. And I'm not going to get all into that, but it's very deep and it's heavy, right? And there's just a lot of processing and a lot of sadness and a lot of like just challenge and struggle and like not even knowing what you feel, right? And or I'll own my statement, sorry, not even knowing what I feel. But anyways, that's when I realized how important it was to have like shallow time, right? Because everything in my all these problems are so deep. And if I go deep with everybody and everything, like it's too much. Like then I see a person and I start to like I don't even want to be around anybody because they're going to be like, asking about all these deep problems, which then brings them all back up to the surface again. And they're not supposed to stay on the surface. Like when you're going through these things, yes, you process them and you have those times and you grieve, you whatever. And then at some point you have to like put it away a little bit, like get your mind off of other things. Otherwise, they just become so consuming and it's all you can think about. And a lot of the things are perpetual problems. They're not problems that you can think about and solve. They're just always going to be a problem. And it's more about like learning to live with it, like finding the new normal. But, anyways, I'm not going to try and go into all those deep things right now because this whole thing is about how it's important to have shallow time, like have time where you're not going deep, right? Because the other thing, I mean, I'm saying like deep and bringing it to the surface, but another image would be that they are wounds, right? And wounds, you do need to check on wounds, right? You need to make sure they're healing well and you shouldn't have them completely covered airtight where they'll get infected. And so, but you do keep them covered for a lot of the time, right? And when they heal, you don't keep pulling them back apart, like just to check and see how it's doing deeper down, right? You let them heal, right? But when our lives are in these difficult positions where like kind of like our pain is on display to the things that are going on in our life because of the circumstances are not very private anymore because like I'm unable to work and so I'm having to talk to all these people about that and then I'm talking to doctors about all these physical things that are they're very personal, and you just feel very exposed. Like it's really important to have those times where you just talk to people about shallow stuff. And I found personally that that was really hard to do with like my closer friends and family. There's like one or two that come to mind that it's been fine. Like it's been was not that difficult to steer it that direction, right? But a lot of people, it's like they can't go shallow because they when they are interacting with me, they're so aware of the things that have changed with me or the difficulties and they're kind of and to some extent I suppose they're probably grieving it a little bit, but like when when somebody's going through some difficult stuff and you're feeling it and you're grieving what they're going through, don't grieve in front of them. That's like a big thing. Like they're already dealing with their own grief. Don't make them process yours also, right? And so and I'm not saying that like sometimes it's just those relationships you have to back out a little bit, like, and not have quite so much time there. For me, I really was struggling with this because I didn't have a because I'm autistic and well, it's not. I'm unusual. Let's just say I'm unusual. I'm not going to blame that on being autistic. I'm just an unusual person. I have unusual hobbies, right? And so it's very hard sometimes to find people who are like who I can talk to about the stuff that's fun for me. Like it's difficult. And so one of the places that I ended up finding some of this like more shallow conversation was I started doing language exchange. I had been learning a little bit of Korean at one point just because I watch Korean TV and watch and listen to Korean music, and I just kind of always wanted to learn another language, and it sounded really interesting to me because there's like these patterns in it because of the different levels of speech. Anyways, so I was learning Korean, and then I was curious, and I found these sites. Some of them are shadier than others, but to do language exchange, and you just talk to people who are learning English, and a lot of like I my Korean was always really bad. Like I can't quite. Anyways, I started one of the things I learned about myself while I was learning Korean is that I don't speak English very well. And so I was like having so much trouble trying to figure out like form sentences in Korean, and I'm like, "Oh, it's cuz I don't think about what I say. Like half the time I don't even complete my sentences and so anyways. But the people who are learning English a lot of times speak a lot more English, and so it's like we speak mostly in English and I can ask a couple little questions. But because there was a language barrier, like that they're still learning English and I don't speak much Korean at all, the things that we could talk about were very, very surface level. And it was really like I'd never considered how beneficial that is to have surface level conversations, right? Because I think to me, a lot of the surface level conversations, or in my experience anyway, in US culture, maybe, I don't know, or maybe where I live, the culture is those things don't feel particularly surface level, like asking about people's like jobs and I don't know, and their health and their children or whatever. Like those things are pretty, those go deep really quick for me because my life's complicated, right? But like when you're talking to people who don't speak all that great of English, it's like we talked a little bit more about like likes and dislikes. And we would talk about, well, because I did know some Korean music and some Korean TV, we would talk about those things because that was something that would, we both had a frame of reference for. And and then I had a friend, like later on, I did more just language exchange just in English with people learning English because some people messaged me. And so I made a friend in Thailand, and that person we talked to for a long time. I still talk to them somewhat regularly. And we really connected just because he works on airplanes and like built like repairing and making the cabin parts, like just, and so he uses a lot of interesting tools. And so we would just talk a lot about like different tools and different things, and he would just like, and he would take little video clips of like when he was doing a process and show me how like they paint these things, and they have this really cool paint room, and like things I'd never considered, like, oh, I see there's like that running water in the room. That makes sense because it helps, take the paint stuff, washes it away from the air and all that. Just things I'd never even considered, right? And so it was interesting, but it was very surface level. And then when I was making things, because I make like my little stop motion puppets or that kind of stuff, like I would then send videos of what I was making and the tools that I was using. And so it was helping him definitely with English. And then there's also the times where he would ask me like really interesting questions about English, and I didn't even think about it. Like I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is really confusing now that you mention it. And because in Thailand where he lives, like there's a lot of people from other countries that come over there to work and stuff, and English is a common language. Like so his boss was French, and so they spoke in English, and so he would ask me some things about like how to ask things or whatever. And it just gave me, it was an interesting topic, but it was shallow enough that like I'm I'm getting human interaction and some like laughing about stuff and all that, without like the danger of going deep because they didn't even have the, like we don't have the dialogue to go deep. Um Another thing for me was like making the silly like stop motion videos and stuff, and um just finding the humor in my day and finding laughing at myself for things for sure, like especially because I have late diagnosis, autistic. I didn't know like that some of my behavior was, I didn't know why I was that way, like the fixations that I get where I really get fixated on things. I know how fixated I get and I can see it but I can't stop it. And so like it's funny to me sometimes because for one example there's a Korean music group from a long time ago, like back before K-pop was a thing. I liked this Korean group that I randomly discovered back when I was in high school. They're called Klon, and I just love them, right? And then they have this whole like thing that happened later on where they had this inspiring story. For me, it was inspiring anyway. One of them was in an accident and can't walk, is in a wheelchair, but still like I've seen performances where he gets up and in the wheelchair and does like dance things in it. And it was just really encouraging for me as somebody who, it's actually what inspired me to dance was like, hey, just do it, do it even if it's like not what you used to be able to do, just do it like because it's still good. It's still awesome, right? But like I was so fixated on them and and I just went with it. Like it was kind of like this point in my life where I was unmasking. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was just like, I'm just gonna if it makes me happy to like fixate on these things and it's like getting me out of this like stressful like downward spiral of my thoughts, then I'm gonna go for it. And so like this group, Klon, I mean they were probably popular, they were very popular back in the day in Korea for a little while, but they're totally like if like when I tell people I like that group, they're like, "What? Like you're a dork." But so anyways, but I have like this big thing I painted in my room with their logo and stuff on it, and like I just went to town with it. I was like, "What the heck? Like if I like it and it makes me happy, I'm gonna go." It doesn't matter if it's dorky. It's super dorky, right? But and leaning into the dorky, like even the deciding to learn to dance and like knowing I don't know what I'm doing and I'm a big dork when I do it, like enjoying that time with myself, laughing with myself, like because sometimes like I have all these like ideas of how I'm supposed to behave and all that. But like I started to think of myself more like two people. Like if I were with myself, like if I was hanging out with somebody and they were doing this, I would be laughing with them. So why am I acting embarrassed and like I shouldn't do it while I'm by myself, Instead, I'm just gonna like laugh with myself about it. And this thing about like the fixations that I get into, like with Klon and with like birds, like when I bird built a nest above my window, I started to just totally be enthralled by birds, and I was always noticing what the birds are doing and talking to people about what's going on with all the birds in my neighborhood because I kind of know all the territories now. But like if those things, those shallow little fixations are what help pull me out of the deep end, like then I need to be like really dedicated to doing that. Even if they're things that other people think are weird, that doesn't matter because I can't like stay in the deep end drowning like because I don't want to be weird or I don't want to do something that might be seen as stupid. And because the other part of it is when you know your life is like falling apart at the seams and like everybody knows it, sometimes it's really hard to have those shallow times because you feel like I know I should probably be trying to fix my life or fix things or explain myself to everybody. And it's like, and so when you do something shallow and silly, it's like everybody's looking at you like how can you be doing that when all these things are falling apart, like like that kind of thing. But that's so wrong. Like I can't keep falling apart unless I have some time where I can have the lighthearted and shallow things and fun things, the shallow end of the pool playtime, right, to be able to have the strength to keep swimming through the deep end that is my life. And so I don't know. I always say my ping pong ball. My brain is like the ping pong ball that bounces all over the place. So I don't know if I really said what I think I said, but hopefully I get the point across anyway.